Shalom. We're speaking to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. Speaking to you on behalf of Brit and Hebrew nations. The lost 10 tribes now are amongst Western peoples. We have proven this. We have proven this from the Bible. We have proven this from secular sources. We have hundreds of proofs, and some of these proofs are very, very strong. Some others less so, but they're all pertinent. They all say something. They're all indicative. And taken all together, these proofs are proof. This is evidence, and this evidence has not been refuted. This evidence, this is nothing. That is where the lost 10 tribes are. They are now amongst Western peoples. We don't know what percentage they are, or whether they're the majority of the population, as we suspect, or that historically they were merely a minority, but the minority that nevertheless did comprise a good proportion of the population, did comprise a significant percentage of the population, and also had historical influence on those peoples, and also that from those peoples they will come out and they will return and they will be reunited with Judah in the end times, and that at present they have a task to fulfill where they are, as we have mentioned and as we will speak of again. Now we are continuing proofs. We are just want to emphasize the biblical proofs that do exist, saying that lost 10 tribes are amongst Western peoples, and the proofs that we have include geography, saying that lost 10 tribes are in these areas according to the Bible. Also the attributes of these people, that have certain attributes, certain types of rulership, certain powers and blessings, and characteristics that we find amongst these peoples and that we do not really find amongst others. In other words, these peoples fit the detailed profile that the Bible gave concerning who the lost 10 tribes would be in the end times. This is especially pertinent when we take all the different points of evidence and we put them all together. And we have to find a group of peoples that fit all of the description, not just select aspects of it. And that is what we do find. This is what we do find amongst Western peoples, and we do not find it elsewhere. It was prophesied that the lost 10 tribes will be at the ends of the earth. This present talk, just to remind you, this present talk concerns the physical. We're going to concentrate on the physical evidence, in other words, the geographical locations of the lost 10 tribes according to the Bible. And we are not going to deal with other factors, for instance, that they would possess the strategic areas, the strategic gateways of their enemies, as the British and the Americans now do, or the British Empire did in the recent past, and the Americans still do. And this was a characteristic of the American expansion, of American U.S. hegemony, military hegemony over the world. And it succeeded seamlessly with to that of the British Empire, which went before it. And also the aspects of this policy were to be found amongst the Dutch and the French, and amongst them too do we find descendants of lost tribes of Israel. And but only amongst these peoples, these empires, or these powers, these international powers, was this practice adopted. And this was prophesied that this is what the lost 10 tribes would do, and this is one of their characteristics. And there are numerous other points. Now we are concentrating, and also we are concentrating. Even though we are concentrating, we are going through it very, very briefly, just giving an outline, a brief outline of the geographical indications locating lost 10 tribes in these areas. So one of the points of the lost 10 tribes are characterized by, according to the Bible, is that they would be at the ends of the earth. Ends of the earth, Katsayaretz in Hebrew meaning, in other words, geographical extremities of the continental masses. It says, if you go to Isaiah 24:16, glorify the Lord in the dawning light, in the name of the Lord God of Israel in the coastlands, of the sea, actually of the sea, islands of the sea. From the ends of the earth we have heard songs, glory to the righteous. Now here we have 2 points, when there should be islands of the sea, or islands of the west in the Hebrew original, and also in the coastlands, and then they should be at the ends of the earth. And also we find in Isaiah 26:15, you have increased the nation, O Lord, you have increased the nation, you have glorified, you have expanded all the borders of the land. And actually, this all the borders of the land, it means Katzei Aretz in Hebrew, ends of the earth. So you stretch them out to all the ends of the earth, according to the Hebrew. And this is referring to the lost tribes of Israel. Also in 8, Isaiah 41, chapters 8 to 9. You, Israel, are my servant, Jacob whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham my friend, you whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, called from his father's regions, and I said to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you, I have not cast you away. So too in Isaiah 43, verse 6, I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar, my daughters from the ends of the earth. So too in Isaiah 49, 6, it says, it is too small a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, to restore the preserved ones of Israel, and I will give you as light to the Gentiles, that you should be my salvation until the ends of the earth. So here we have ends of the earth. This is where the lost tribes of Israel, the Israelites, are being spoken to, they are being addressed. And we also have rabbinical midrash, and midrash, also the Talmud says, for instance, in Isaiah 49, 6, so these verses are referring to the 10 tribes of Israel. When the Bible speaks to the Israelites, it's either addressing Judah, that is the Jewish people, or the 10 tribes of Israel. And according to the context, according to different terminology, and we can discern which and what section of the Israelite nation is being spoken to. And in this case, our understanding that is referring to the 10 tribes of Israel and indicating the positioning of the 10 tribes of Israel is confirmed by rabbinical sources, from the early rabbinical sources, as sages of the Talmud. And we're not saying that you have to accept it, that because of this you have to accept it. This is something for each person to make his own decision upon. But it's worth noting. It's worth. It adds authority to it. It adds a consensus to this, to our understanding, and it shows that we are not just plucking things out of the air, as if to say, but we have a tradition, we have authority behind us. Also, another point that concerns lost 10 tribes of Israel is that they should be in the Isles, E-A-M. And Isles could mean coastlands. In some contexts it could mean coastlands, but mostly it means just isles. We have, as we said already, Isaiah 24:15, glorify the Lord in the dawning light, literally fires. The name of the Lord God of Israel in the coastlands, that is islands of the sea. 69 says, surely the coastlands, that is the islands, shall wait for me. The ships of Tarshish will come first. Tarshish, according to biblical exegesis, referred to as a region of the Atlantic Ocean, adjoining the port in southwest Spain of Tartessus, and it referred to the Atlantic Ocean in general in rabbinical terminology. And understanding of this passage, and at all events it's an area adjoining the Atlantic Ocean. And it says that apparently the Atlantic Ocean in general says that the ships of Tarshish first, that is ships plying the Atlantic Ocean, will bring back the children of Israel in the end times. Therefore the children of Israel must, by implication, must be found in the end times in that area. It says in Isaiah 69, the coastlands, that is the island, shall wait for me. The ships of Tarshish will come first to bring your sons from afar, the silver and their gold with them, to the name of the Lord your God and the Holy One of Israel, because he has glorified you. The ships of Tarshish first, that is the ships of plying the Atlantic Ocean, will be the first ones. That was where the lost 10 tribes primarily will be found in the end times. That's where they will come back from. And he continues, and so we find in Jeremiah 31:9-10, from the father to Israel and Ephraim. Ephraim represents the lost 10 tribes in general, or it represents that section of Joseph known as Ephraim. It all says, Ephraim is my firstborn, and my father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of the Lord, you O nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, he who scattered Israel, gather him, keep him as the shepherd does his flock. In other words, we declared, this will be declared in the isles, because God will bring the Israelites back from that region. Also, the lost 10 tribes will be found in fires and peninsulas and coasts. This is in Jeremiah 31:8. I'll bring them from the north country, that is north of the land of Israel, and you bring them from the ends, that is the ends, the Aretz, coastlands of the earth. Among them blind and the lame, the woman with a child, and the one who labours with child together, a great shall return there. As we said in Isaiah 69, he mentions Tarshish, that is the Atlantic Ocean, when the lost ten tribes will come back from that region. Also, we find the lost ten tribes being described as located primarily in the west, as it says in Isaiah 24:14, they shall lift up their voice, they shall sing for the majesty of the Lord, they shall cry aloud from the sea. In Hebrew, miyama, from miyam, from the sea, from the west. The west, the sea and the west, in Hebrew are synonymous, because the Mediterranean Sea was to the west of the land of Israel. And also Hosea 11:10 says, they shall walk after the Lord, they will roar like a lion when he roars, and his son shall come trembling from the west. And Hosea 11:10, and according to the Aramaic translations and the rabbinical commentary, this is referring to the exiles coming back, returning from the west. Isaiah 49:12 also speaks of the lost tribes of Israel. He said, these shall come from afar, and these from the north and the west, from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Land of Sinim means Australia. And that is how it was understood. In the Northland, we saw how the lost tribes will come from the Northland in Jeremiah 3:18, and also 31, Jeremiah 31:6-10. As he says in Jeremiah 31:6-10, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of the Lord, O nations, and declare in the isles afar off, who scattered Israel will gather him and keep him as the shepherd does his flock. We also have, as we said, Land of Sinim, meaning Australia, in Isaiah 49:12. Australia and New Zealand, that is with lost tribes. A portion of lost tribes will also return from there. We also have in Isaiah 41:9, concerning lost tribes coming back from the ends of the earth. We have another qualification that is of interest. But you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham, my friend. You whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from his father's regions. Actually, what the words translated as father's regions are Asileia, meaning the most noble places, the best places of the earth. And I said to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you, I have not cast you away. In other words, not only will they be at the ends of the earth, because the Antarctica, the Arctic, Siberia, also at the ends of the earth, but it will be the places that are most congenial, the best places of the earth for human habitation. And this is where the lost tribes are found in such regions. They're found in northwest Europe and in North America. These places are the most salubrious climates for human habitation. They're most conducive to civilization, to the advancement of civilization and culture. And we're all human beings, and we're all influenced by our environment and by our surroundings. And if it's hot, we get tired, we get enervated, and we may find things a little difficult. If it's too hot, and the same if it's too cold. We need moderate climates, or Western peoples need moderate climates to cope to their maximum potential, and this is where the lost tribes were to be found, according to the Bible. This is where indeed they were found. Another point that we find concerning lost tribes is that they would be in Zaraphath. Zaraphath, according to Abijah, the book of Abijah 1:20, it says, in the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess the land of the Canaanites as far as Zaraphath, the captives of Jerusalem which are in Sepharad shall possess the cities of the south. Abijah 1:20. The captivities of this host of the children of Israel, Galuta Hail as they, in Hebrew, meaning this first exile, according to the commentators such as Rashi, such as Abarbanel, such as Radak, such as all of the major commentators say this is referring to the exile of lost tribes, and lost tribes will be in the region in the end times known as Zaraphath. Zaraphath means, according to Rashi, means France. And according to other commentators, it means not only France, but the region to the north of it, including Holland and that area, and also the region across the seas in the British Isles, according to the Barbanel. And so we have, this is where the lost tribes were to be concentrated, and this is where they emanated from. And so this too is a very strong evidence in its own right. We also have the path of migration, the Dolman path of migration. It was set in Jeremiah 31:21, set up signposts, make up landmarks, set your heart toward the highway, the way in which you went. Turn back, O Virgin of Israel, turn back to these your cities. Jeremiah is talking to the lost tribes in the end times. He's telling them to set their hearts, to realize where they came from, and to look at the pathways tracing their present locations back to the cities of the Holy Land. And he speaks about signposts and landmarks. So what are these signposts and landmarks? So in Hebrew they are Tamurim and Zionim, and these expressions as explained by the Radak, Rabbi David Kimchi, and other commentators, are referring to heaps of stones or major erected monuments of stone menhir type monuments. In other words, he's referring to dolmens and megalithic type monuments that were actually set up in the Iron Age after the tribes were exiled on the whole, and they show a migratory path. You can look at a book of archaeology discussing the dolmens and showing where the dolmens were to be found. And you see a migratory path through the British Isles, Ireland, also in Scandinavia, in France, in that region, also in parts of Spain, through the Mediterranean Isles, also in the Caucasus, and then a conversion on the land of Israel, on Syria, Jordan, and Israel. That's where the dolmens are to be found, or especially dolmens of a particular type, with an inclination of 23 degrees and different identifying signs, showing that these very same dolmens were to be found in along this route of migration. And this also is proof that these peoples, that is where these peoples came from. They came from the land of Israel, and according to Jeremiah, we need to see these megalithic monuments. We have to consider them as proof of the migratory path, and to take notice of it, to bear cognizance of it, to examine it, to study it, because it proves that the Lost End tribes, it will show proof, it will give proof that the Lost End tribes came from that region, that is, that they came from, that they are now in Western Europe, or including peoples who came from Western Europe in recent times, such as the inhabitants of North America, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. They were concentrated in Western Europe, and the people of Western Europe in ancient times could trace themselves back to the land of Israel. In Numbers 24:7, it also predicts concerning Lost End tribes being in several oceans, and that is where they are to be found. We have North America and several oceans on both sides of the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. We also have Australia and the Indian Ocean, the bottom of the Indian Ocean, and New Zealand, and so on. We have different areas, and this is and also the lost tribes in Western Europe and North Sea, and so on. This is in the oceans, on several oceans. And this is what was prophesied. He will pour water from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. Not only would they be in several oceans, so they would be the most powerful nations in the earth. According to Numbers 24:7, this indeed has been fulfilled through first of all through the British, even before the British, through the French and the Dutch, also powerful nations, empires in their time. They were followed by the British Empire, which was controlled 1/4 of the Earth's area, and almost the same percentage of its population. And after that, they were followed up by the USA, which did not directly rule over people, but had influence over all the nations of the earth, and it still does have. So these are geographical signs showing the location of the Lost End tribes amongst Western nations. And this is evidence, and in addition to this evidence, where we saw that the Lost End tribes would be in the ends of the earth, we saw that they would be in the isles of the sea, in the coastlands of the sea, at the ends of the earth, also in peninsulas and coastlands and so on, that would be connected with the Atlantic Ocean area primarily. That's where they were first returned from, as the Britain and Western Europe and North America all adjoin the Atlantic Ocean area, where the Lost End tribes will primarily return from, according to Isaiah 69. And we also saw that they would be concentrated in the west, according to Isaiah 24:14 and Isaiah 1:10, and that we saw that where it says sea also means west in Hebrew. It's the same word, so that if you look up the sources, the biblical verses, this is where we will find the Lost End tribes referred to as being in end times. It would also be to the northwest of the land of Israel, as shown in Isaiah 49:12. They would be to the north of the land of Israel, as told in Jeremiah 3:1 and 31:6-10, and that a portion of them would also be in Australia, in the land of Sinim, as we see in Isaiah 49 verse 12. They would not only would they be at the ends of the earth, they would be in the most salubrious sections of the earth. And the climates most conducive to human habitation, as we were told in Isaiah 41:9, at delineate, the most noble places of the earth, the ends of the earth, and at delineate, and at the best areas of the earth. This is proof. This is proof that we have. Another proof that we saw that they would also be connected with Zaraphath, meaning France, Britain, and that general area, and that is where the Lost in Tribes mostly emanated from. And in addition to that, there would also be, according to archaeology, there would be a part of monuments, megalithic monuments, that enable us to trace the ancient Israelites from the land of Israel to areas in Western Europe, including Ireland, Britain, Scandinavia, France, Holland, and related areas. So this is all proof, and this proof is very conclusive, very strong in its own right, and this proof has, or should, deserve to be considered not only in its own right, but also in the light of additional evidence that we have. We have a lot of more proofs, and everything altogether points in the same direction concerning Lost in Tribes being amongst Western peoples. Thank you very much. May the Lord God of Israel bless all of you.